And we're back for our very last day of live streaming talkbacks. I'm probably not allowed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I have very warm and strong feelings for strong older women. It's just how it is. And this block really speaks to my personal taste. And again, the entire film festival is a reflection of the programming committee, and not just our taste, but our understanding of the conversations that need to happen today, the conversations that we like to do through either entertaining films or disturbing films or films that underline certain things. But this particular block really, if someone did know me, knows it's got Pearl written all over it. So I'm excited to be here. And I'm also excited about bringing to you two people that I know can handle this conversation masterfully. I myself am a Jewish woman, but also a filmmaker. And both of these films spoke to me for a number of those reasons. My name is Pearl Gluck. I am the artistic director of the Center Film Festival. And today we are going to have a conversation about two films that have been put together under a block called Crowning Their Legacy. And if you've seen the film, you understand why crowning, and their legacy fits to both as well. If you haven't seen the film, you're about to get enticed to do so. You can comment and question in the chats for Facebook or YouTube or in Eventive, and Randy, who's behind the curtain, will be sending it our way. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you two of the people that we've asked to host this conversation. One of them is Eliana Adler, who's actually on sabbatical this year, so we're extremely grateful that she's zooming in from Maryland. And Eliana is an associate professor in history and Jewish studies. And her first book, which I think you'll find very relevant, is called In Her Hands, The Education of Jewish Girls in Tsarist Russia. It traces the emergence and development of formal schooling for Jewish girls in pre-revolutionary Russia. Her areas of interest and education and research is Eastern Europe, the memory of Eastern Europe, an American Jewish community, a family, and the Holocaust. And the other person I asked to join us is Kathy Warner, who is the professor of history, anthropology, and religious studies here at Penn State also. And her first book is Burden of Dreams, History and Identity in Post-Soviet Ukraine, and it analyzes the colonial nature of the Soviet Union by examining how historical events were interpreted as a form of political protest and represented in commemorations, festivals, and the urban landscape to articulate this sense of nationhood. A lot of these subjects get explored, especially in F.M. Graboy's film, but also as women, I think we can really connect to Lorraine's film on many levels, also about legacy, about commemoration, and about connecting with where one comes from, including where they are at this moment as significant. So with that, let me introduce you to two of the filmmakers. We have Efim Graboy of the feature, The War of RAYA, SINITSINA. SINITSINA, did I get that right, Efim?
SINITSINA. Yes.
Oddly to describe it this way, but a playful film about a very serious an important subject as represented by a woman in her 90s, and FM's constant following of her around, and gleaning what he could from her, but pushing back to get reactions to how things are in the current generation. And Lorraine Price, who's filmed The Hairdresser. I had to watch it twice in a row. When I first watched it, it came to me through Film Fatale, which is an organization that supports women directors of films. And that too really looks in a much more subtle way as the relationship between the filmmaker and the subject. And of course, the main person and their relationship with other people. So without further ado, I will slowly slip out. I'll come back in a few minutes. Enjoy the conversation. This is the discussion and talk back after crowning their legacy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pearl. And thank you for all of this. I've been, I'm not there in person, but I've been watching films every day and just enjoying it so much. So maybe I'll start with a question. Hard to decide which question. I have lots, but let me try and stuff a couple into one question. Both of these films are concerned with aging as well as other questions and themes. So I wonder if you could talk about both sort of what brought you to that topic, young filmmakers. Was it the person who drew you in? How did you get there? And also some of your thoughts about how to show aging in a way that is honest, but also preserves dignity. I'd love to hear both of your thoughts.
Lorraine, do you want to start? Or?
Sure. Yeah, I can start. So I made this film for my grandmother. Actually, the film is dedicated to her. And for my entire life, my grandmother dyed her hair fire engine red and wore bright red lipstick, never left the house without it. She had costume jewelry on always and bright floral print blouses. She's just this ostentatious dresser. And when she was in hospice care at my aunt's house toward the end of her life, her hair was short. It was like in a little pixie cut because that was the easiest thing to manage. And it was white like snow. And, you know, her lips were nude and her nails, which she always kept painted and like they were about this long. They were pale as well. And she didn't look very much like the woman that I had known my whole life. And while that is to be expected, it still struck me. And after she passed away, she was in the United States, I came back to Montreal and I read this tiny little article in a local newspaper about this woman named Kathleen Mahoney, who is a hairdresser, and she worked as a volunteer in the palliative care unit at a hospital here in Montreal. And she would go in and she'd do the hair and the makeup sometimes, or paint the nails of patients of the terminally ill in palliative care. And the second I read that article, it just completely transformed my understanding of end-of-life care and what I could have offered to my grandmother, but I never thought to offer because it's just not really a part of our conversation around the end of life. And so I contacted Kathleen and I told her my story and my connection to her work. And I asked her if she'd be okay with participating in film. And that's how the whole journey began. I don't remember the second part of your question, but maybe Ephraim can speak first about how he came to his film.
I'll just unmute myself. Okay. It's a very complicated answer for me, but to make it simple, I grew up in a family where my parents were very old people. When I say very old, I was born when my father was 50. And basically all my life, I grew up with a person that people thought that he's my grandfather. And all my life I was waiting for him to go because someday it was supposed to happen, and it was supposed to happen very early. And after we made an immigration to Israel, it was a very tough time for my family and my parents. They didn't manage to make it in. It was too hard. The adjustment was too hard. The language was too hard. So basically, my father, who I knew as a very successful person in his 50s and beginning of 60s, he became a depressed person, very weak, and he lost his will to live, let's say it like this. And he had a very longing feeling of going back to Russia, and he never did it. And he lost his power in the family, and it switched with my mom. But anyway, the family was not happy. And my parents were not, they didn't have an energy. And I was so afraid since I was a child that I'm gonna get old and I'm gonna be exactly as they are. And I made a few films about old people. And every film, it's like, it was a big subject of my 20s. I made a film in a nursing house because I was afraid to die. And I made another film because I was afraid to age. And then somehow, like with flow, it came to Raya. And I was looking for a person who I always, in every film that I did until then, I was looking for a person who will change this perspective for me, who will show me that aging is not that scary, that life is not over and you can be young in your soul. Somewhere I believed in it inside, but the fear was too big. So every one of my characters, they kind of teached me that. They give me one more piece in the puzzle, another piece. And then Raya came, and it was just connection between my cinematic journey and my karmic journey and my knowledge of old people and how to handle old people. And then basically we met in a very, very precise time in history, in very precise time in history and very precise time personally. So, and how to show aging? Wow, I thought that because my film is a very personal point of view, and sometimes it's unconsciously I film and I see a person, and the person is beautiful in front of my eyes. So this is how I would show him also through my lens. But the one thing that was very important for me, and I talked about it with Raya, is that I don't want only beautiful things to happen, because I see beauty also in the regular natural process of aging. For example, until some moment, I was very naive and I didn't know that Raya doesn't have teeth at all. So, and when I discovered it, I was like, oh, I didn't know it. She was like, Yefim, I'm 94 years old. What do you expect? And then she showed me how it looks like, and I was like, we are going to film that. And it was a very tough process of explaining her why it's important for me to show it. So we had kind of an agreement that everything is showable, kind of everything that I'm allowed to see, people also will be allowed to see. And actually on the process, a lot of people were against it. A lot of people takes it personally. Why would you show a person, like we all know that the person doesn't have teeth. Why do you need to show it to us? Why do you need to show this ugly part? Or for example, if the close-up of the eyes, extreme close-up, why would you show it to us? Like it's too close. So sometimes people get very scared about these things. And for me, it was just because I'm very, very close and intimate with her. It's not bad or good, ugly or beautiful. Everything is beautiful in this process for me, at least it was. And this is how I try to portray her.
I have a question that follows up a little bit on that. Both of these films are indeed about aging, but they also, to my mind, are about tenderness and the tenderness that goes into caring for another person. And I think the tenderness for me most clearly came through when there was sort of a lack of tenderness. It's sort of through the sweetness of the relationships that are portrayed in each of these films into relief. I too, I have to say, I was shocked when I saw Raisa Borisovna without teeth. I also thought those were her teeth. I did not find that ugly. And I saw her eye, but I also did not find that ugly. I mean, I found that was just who she is. But a moment where there was like a lack of tenderness that really threw into relief how really genuine and sweet your relationship with her was when her daughter was speaking about her. You know, and when her daughter said, oh, you know, she has a very difficult character. Sometimes it's so hard to live with her. That really, by this point in the film, I had already really fallen in love with Raya. And that was like a moment of a lack of tenderness that threw into relief the ongoing care that that you really communicated in your relationship with her. And I also regretted how that in English, the Russian expressions, you know, in the beginning or at certain moments, I can tell you filmed earlier on, then you refer to her in, you know, Raisa Borisovna and Vy, and then afterwards it goes to Raya, and you can just see the closeness that has evolved in over the course of the film. And so I was wondering if you could say something about sort of communicating tenderness through these harsh moments. I mean, that was the daughter speaking was the revealing moment in your film, Ephraim. And in Lorraine's, I also thought it was just really sublime tenderness, the way Kathleen cared for this woman and did her hair. But, you know, for starters, this tremendous sweetness occurs in a very institutional, sterile, hospital kind of environment. And that's very untender. But for me, the moment was when they were moving the bed, and the bed makes this just horrible sound. And my first thought was, oh my God, this poor woman hearing that every time she adjusts her position. So that was like a moment of harshness in an otherwise just really sublimely tender encounter. So I was wondering if you could both speak to that.
Sure. Me first? I feel
Either.
waiting for me. Yes, absolutely. If I might just digress for one tiny second, I find it really fascinating, Ephraim, that you have been pursuing these kinds of stories for such a long time. I showed my film to a friend of mine who I went to university with, and I actually studied creative writing. And when I showed it to her, she said, you know, Lorraine, you've been making stories about old women and dying for as long as I can remember. You know, you were 18 and you were writing about these things. And I had completely forgotten, but it's true that it's kind of been I don't know if I want to call it an obsession, but something that I've been turning around in my work for a very long time. Anyhow, it's interesting to me.
It's a fascinating subject, you know, it's end of life, beginning of next one. It's the border, it's super interesting.
Yeah.
Even after the fear of me, for example, goes away, it's a very interesting subject.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I relate to.
You approach it from a perspective that isn't fearful. Open to so many different possibilities. I mean, I think for me, yes, because I was shooting in a hospital setting, it was that provided sort of a very natural contrast between the sterile environment of the hospital, and try as they might in palliative care to put lamps in the hospital room, dim light, bring in personal objects, and, you know, try as they might to make it feel as much like a home as possible. It's still a hospital. And the second, like you say, they move a bed up and down for someone's comfort, or open the door into the hallway, and then you can hear the nurses and the machines, and, you know, it sort of betrays that ambiance a little bit. And so the contrast of the environment with, like you say, this very tender and human interaction between the two of them was really interesting to me. And frankly, I didn't have to work very hard at all to capture it, because it was just there for me. But what I wanted to do was to really concentrate on touch, on like the physical interaction between Kathleen and Madame Lalonde, who is the patient in the film, because I think so often we are afraid to touch people who are close to death, as though, you know, it's contagious, as though it's going to infect us in some way. So I don't think that they are touched enough. And you can hear Madame Lalonde when she's having her hair washed in this basin, you know, she's like, you know, she just makes these little sounds of like pleasure, because it just feels so good to have her to be touched. And we all know how good it can feel to have our hair washed, let alone if you've been lying in a bed for, you know, a couple weeks. And that's just, if someone doesn't volunteer to do that for you, it's not necessarily going to be done. So yeah, so for me, it was really this like physical interaction, and to concentrate on that as much as possible, that I wanted to draw out of the situation.
Um, it's interesting. Raya, she's really tough person. Like, it's not a lie. She's in constant war. So her trauma transformed her war trauma. It transformed through years, through all her life, and brought her tree that she's now to the person who she is, and she's fighting in every aspect of her life, and this is what holds her for so many years. She wakes up, she's at war, and it's really tough to be around a person that always fighting in fighting mode. And it's also beautiful to see a person that always fights, and to see how this trauma developed into energy of life, into joy of life. She's fighting and she's enjoying it. And I think this is the combination of Raya. She's soft and she is harsh in the same time. And the thing is that she was alone, she was lonely, and she had a lot of energy, and nobody around her could share this energy with her. They couldn't get to this level. And when I came, it was just a perfect match, because I told her, okay, listen, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to give you all my attention that I can. And this is how it started. This is kind of, in the end, this is the love that was there. Of course, I came as a film director that had a character, but in the end, the borders, they just erased with time, and I just came there to give her my attention, because I had a goal to get inside this person as much as I can. I want to understand this person, to feel the trauma, to feel everything of this person, and to get there, you need to be very gentle, very patient, because it's not easy process to be around 94 years old woman. She's smart, she's sharp, but still, she can say the same thing all over again. And sometimes to get into poenta, to get to the contrapunct, you will listen for an hour for something. So, and there are days when you are better and you have a lot of patience and energy to share. And there are days that you are pissed off and you just want to get to the point. So it's a relationship. It was a relationship. Like it went in, out, until it became like a family, kind of. And about her harshness, I never judged her. It was not my job to judge. I was there and I just was listening. And I think this is what brings this particular story between us to some very to the tenderness that you were speaking. I think so. It from my perspective, at least.
I meant actually, I thought like the harshness came a bit from her daughter. I got that fighting spirit. And I guess when I was watching the film, it didn't occur to me, yes, it might be difficult to live with someone, like you said, who wakes up and is already at war. That's true. You can watch a film and sort of be at it with somebody, and that can be enchanting, and you go along with them, and you really, you want them to win the battle, even though there is a certain, you do feel sad that this traumatic event when she was 17 years old has really defined her life. And here she is at 94. But I felt like her daughter, when her daughter was critical of her, that was the first sort of moment when I felt it seemed almost harsh to me. And I didn't know whether you hadn't, maybe you saw it as just portraying Raya in all her complexity.
Yes, and also this is a more of portraying of the relationship, because I wanted to show some other perspective of somebody who knows her, who knows her from the closest person to her. And inside their relationship, they have a lot of issues that are unsolved. And the issues related to the point when the daughter, Aline, Allah, she left the house. She was, Raya kind of threw her and sent her to her grandmother. And in this point in their lives, it kept, and they didn't solve it. So she's angry at her, and she loves her, and she angry at her together. So this is their relationship, and they just came to a very particular catharsis in this moment, that she just exploded and shared everything that on her heart. Yeah. It was not an easy moment for Raya, by the way. Raya took it very hard after that. She didn't like that she spoke like that in front of me.
Efim, you started to answer my next question already, but for both of you, I'm interested in the choice of names. There's so much that happens in a film, and you're right. I mean, I see that she is at war, but she's also in relationships and in love and has pride. You know, there's a lot of things about her. So it's a choice what to call a film, and it draws our attention to it. And in terms of the hairdresser, I think it's sort of a bait and switch, because we all think we know what a hairdresser is, but then there's this shock, and obviously that's a choice also. So I'm curious from both of you how you settled in on a title.
All right.
Yes, I mean that is it. That was my intention. So I wanted to sort of play on our preconceptions of what a hairdresser is a little bit. You know, typically hairdressing is viewed as this like pedestrian profession, and so I wanted to first set Kathleen up as a lifelong hairdresser and someone who actually felt very connected to that work for her entire life, but without telling you how she practices it now, and then to let the audience discover what she has done with her work, because we don't, we go in, maybe we get our hair done, and we talk about our personal lives with our hairdresser, and yes, we confide in them a little bit, and there is that kind of a relationship, but we don't typically think of it as a meaningful relationship in our lives for the most part. And here was this woman who, long past retirement, into her 80s, was still doing hair and had been doing the hair of the terminally ill for 30 years. And it is such a beautiful and meaningful and noble thing to do, I think. So yes, that was 100% my intention, was to sort of do a little bit of a bait and switch with the title.
For me, it was not related at all. It's the word war is not, the intention was not to go to the war that she really fought back then, but to the point that she is now in her life. And in this point, she is basically, her biggest fear is kind of happening in the reality. Her biggest fear is to lose her friends, her people, her comrades, the people who fought with her. It's something that stayed with her through all life, and to lose memory about them, about her. This is the thing that she is afraid about it the most. And kind of, this is her new war that she was at, because it started to happen. Her close friends started to die. The memory started to be changed and erased. So she was, I saw it as, I saw all these people, kind of an army of old people. And Raya was the leader of this army for me. So this is how this name came. And of course, the thing that I said before, that she's constantly in a war in every aspect of her life. So for me, it was in the middle of a process. I decided that it's going to be the name, and I didn't even think about nothing else anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about making these two films. One thing that I think they both have in common is that they both focus on sort of the minutia of everyday life and how that, forms a person and forms those relationships. And I was wondering if you could talk about the challenges for a filmmaker of trying to animate and render interesting and capture the attention, so that your audience, goes along with you as you're depicting just sort of the minutia of daily life. I mean, for example, Lorraine, in your film, you've got moments where Kathleen is just searching for Madame Laron's room. And it's sort of towards the end, verbally, when she really puts into perspective all of these little things that she does each day and how that renders her own life meaningful. I wonder if you could talk about that. And I think also, Ephraim, in your film, you see her, you see Raya going to these different meetings and just, sleeping sometimes and just having tea in her apartment. And it certainly gives us a sense of them, but how do you as a filmmaker, tackle that when having tea or searching for a room, these are not interesting moments. How do you animate those for your viewers?
Oh,
Go
oh. Wow, it's an interesting question. First of all, I think that I never think about the viewer when I film. I hope they will forgive me. But it's the last thing that I'm thinking about is that somebody will follow me, like, and it will be interesting for the person. But I see something else. When I come to a shooting, I have a particular plan, or I have a particular thing that I want to fulfill, and I'm kind of fishing. And I know that in this particular day, something some particular is going to happen, or some particular feelings are involved in past days. So this is what I'm concentrating. I'm less interested in the thing itself, but more of what it brings. What do I see? And in very realistic scenes where I follow her into the meetings and celebrations, it was only one thing that I came every time, and I came with something in me. I knew that every time could be the last time. Actually, it's overall how I came to this film. But in these particular moments, when they've been a lot of veterans in the place, I came to one day and I filmed, and then another day I didn't see the person anymore, and I was like, "Where is he?" And he's dead. And it happened every time, every week, somebody was gone, and this feeling of loss was always constantly with me. And so in some particular days, I was going because I knew that maybe next time this person won't be anymore, and I have an obligation, like I need to do it. So I came with this always in my mind. And for example, in the scene where they're celebrating, it was always in my mind that I see these faces for the last time. And each time, that no matter what happened, it's a hospital, it's just a meeting, it's a celebration, no matter what, I'm in the face of these people, because maybe he looks in my eyes and it's going to be the last time. And this is the only thing that I'm holding in my head, in my heart. So basically, it was not about the particular thing that happened, but about maybe this thing happened for the last time. And this is how I approached the shootings of all this film, basically. And also one more thing is that it's related to your question. In some moment, I showed the materials to some people from the industry. After a while, I made some kind of 12 minutes trailer, and I showed them, and they said, "This is pretty boring." And I was like, "Wow, I didn't expect that. Like, I expected everything, but not that it's boring. How could it be boring? For this scene, it was so emotional, and this was so emotional. How was it boring? And then I realized that I bring these materials as a clean plate, like objective camera. Just some situation. And I realized that when it's not from my point of view, not from my feelings, not related to my feelings, but just objective camera, then it's nobody gets connected emotionally to what happens. And then a lot of things changed in the film, and I realized that, okay, I need to bring my point of view to this, to every, and I had, just I decided not to put it back then. So everything changed when my perspective and my feelings to Raya and to these people came into these realistic scenes.
It's really interesting. I guess, yeah, my situation was similar and different, I suppose. You know, one of the challenges in making this film was that I had Kathleen on board, and I got to know Kathleen really well. But because I was going to be shooting in a palliative care unit, I knew that my agreement with the foundation that runs that unit was very specific in terms of the kind of access I could have. You know, I agreed not to ask people questions, of course, about their experience unless they wanted to offer it up. They could offer it up to me and to the camera if they felt inclined to, but that I wasn't going to pry about those kinds of things. And so I knew that it would be easier for me to create a connection with Kathleen for the audience than it was going to be with a patient who might be there one day, and then the next time I went back to shoot might not be there. And especially because their contact, however meaningful it is also very brief. So it was a concern of mine whether or not people would connect to both Kathleen and the person whose hair was being done. But I also, in terms of choosing to shoot it the way that I did, and the minutia of this interaction in the daily life, I also felt as though the context and their interaction was powerful enough that if I tried to do anything, that it could carry the film. Just that simple interaction was going to carry the film and be enough for people to connect emotionally, and that if I tried to do anything extra, it was actually going to take away from that. And that the more space I gave their interaction and the motions of getting to this place, into this room to do this thing with another human being, that the more space I gave that, the more meaningful it would be. And so I just had to trust it. Also because there was no development shooting in the hospital space. So the second I came in with my camera, I was in production. Mm-hmm. Which meant the first time I ever shot Kathleen doing someone's hair was with Madame Lalonde, who is in the film, and that just became the film. I was really lucky that I was lucky and unlucky in the making of the film, in the sense that I got to know Kathleen really well, as I said, but I also lost access because the hospital changed administration at some point, and so I had to get that back. But while I was working to regain my access, which took about 4 years, the whole process from the minute I started the film until it was finished, I just started going over and sitting on Kathleen's couch with a recorder, with my Zoom, and we just talked for hours. And that is all of the VO that is in the film, is from these years of conversations between the two of us. And that also, I think, allowed her to reflect, as you say, on her connection to the work that she's doing, and on to sort of this weekly interaction with people in the hospital, and what made it meaningful for her in her life. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, I think we still have time. I have a question about sort of the context of viewing these films. Do we have time, Pearl?
We have time for one more question.
Okay, I'll try and keep the question short, but both of these films, I feel like the audience that we're seeing it is different from the context in which they're filmed. And I'm just thinking about the ways in which that challenges or changes the experience. And specifically, Yefim, to you, this is a personal film, but I think in an Israeli context, it's sort of an interesting view into this subculture that a lot of the population can't see into, but knows is there. Why do they wear medals all the time? What's with those Russians? And it's sort of opening up. Whereas in the U.S., I don't think anyone's heard of the Siege of Leningrad, and so it becomes a much more personal story. And I'm just thinking about the ways in which that changes, and both of the films also being not in English, that creates a certain separation. I mean, there could have been patients who spoke English in Montreal, but it's a French conversation going on, and that also a little bit changes our access and appreciation. So just wondering if either of you, or both of you, have any thoughts about that.
Wow, this is a very good question overall, because first of all, to understand the context of everything, immigration, two Russian immigrants from totally different generations meet in Israel, in a Jewish land, and the place that was the result of Holocaust and the Second World War, and they meet there, and they make a movie together, a journey, a Russian-speaking journey that is broadcasted in Israeli television in 100% Russian, except 2 words in Hebrew. So basically, first of all, it's interesting because it's touching also Russia and all the ex-Soviet bloc very, very close, and it gives them totally different perspective on veterans, and gives them some freedom that they don't have, that they cannot touch, some point of view from outside, from inside and outside. And for Israelis, it means that we are, first of all, in a changing transformational moment where national TV can allow to broadcast a Russian-speaking film, which shows that Russian society, a Russian subculture, is getting more in a mainstream, kind of, and they ready. Because I think personally, it's a big achievement, because I think like 5-10 years ago it was not possible, and it also was not relevant yet. So it was relevant for Russian society, but the subject that we are talking about, the end of era, the end of the witness, the person who been there, that's it. It's like we are closing some chapter, and it's very nice that we are closing this chapter by giving some transformation of some particular culture in Israel. It's also very interesting because this film was, for me, it's like a personal film with something, with a collective memory. It's a collective memory against the very personal memory, personal experience. And for me, this film talks about love, about feelings. It's not about the war. And if the relationship between the characters are working, are doing their job, then I thought that this film would be borderless, because everybody understand love, everybody understand aging, dying. It's like it's for all of human species. We are connected by that, by these rules. But somehow it didn't happen, because the film was not a very big success in the West, and I was very surprised. Like every time we didn't get there, I had a very big belief in this film, but we didn't get to the big stages in West. But this film exploded in East Europe and in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And I was amazed because for me it doesn't matter, but it is matter apparently. Yes, there is a change of somebody sees this film differently. So yeah, this is very interesting. I don't know if I answered. I think I answered more or less the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me because yeah, similarly, my film's done very well in the States, but less well in Canada. And I wonder why. I have no idea why. I don't know why. If anyone wants to hazard a guess, I am all ears. But in terms of context, I think that, so I shot this film the fall before the pandemic hit. And I had a couple other shoots planned for the spring, but then of course, with COVID, Kathleen, my main subject being 84 and the whole film taking place in a hospital, it just became very clear very quickly that that it wasn't going to happen anytime soon. And so I decided to cut the film with the footage that I had. And I think it's the better film for it, actually. I think it was sort of the universe had the better plan in that sense. But I was concerned about releasing it in the pandemic because I wasn't sure how it was going to land for people. I didn't know if people would want to be avoiding the subject of death and dying more than usual. And I think in some cases that's true, and in other cases it's not. But I do think, at least for me, it contrasts with the context in which it was released, in the sense that I think that the death that has been the kind of death that has been at the forefront of our mind has been a very extreme pandemic death. You know, COVID, overrun ICUs without, you know, where care is triaged and you can't receive the kind of care that you would ideally have at the end of life. And so that contrasted with the kind of care that Kathleen provides to the terminally ill when there is time and there is space, you know, an indeterminate amount of time, but still is really interesting to me. And to me, at least, it makes this interaction between the two of them even more powerful. Yes.
Thank you.
Also, I wanted to add, it's these people, they are truly believe that these people, I mean veterans of the Second World War that live in Israel, they all truly believe that the Red Army and them personally brought to the state of Israel, like to the existence of state of Israel, that they are responsible.
Great moment in the hospital when she was yelling that at the nurses. That was
exactly because they are truly believe of that, and they see a totally different perspective in the country they live in, because Israel is very Americanized and Western country. So in the schools you learn that British and the American they won the war. So for them they take it very personally. And Israelis truly, they think that, oh, okay, these crazy Russians, they 9 in May, they go out with the medals. It's basically really all they know about them. So it was a big fortune that I could like bring this layer of reality in this country to Israelis, so they can look a bit differently, so change their perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, fortunately, even though we can probably keep talking for hours with both of you, actually all four of you, we have to end here. But I thought, no, I did get kicked out because of the powers that be in the ether wide webs, but I'm back, and unfortunately for you, and so just in time. So if you answer this question already, forgive me, but I like to end on asking everybody on the panel. We can start with our filmmakers. What are you working on next? So if you haven't discussed that yet, I'm assuming you haven't. Wonderful. Yeah, FM, do you want to tell us what your next project is, if any, or if you're just continuing to distribute this film?
Yes, I need a cigarette for that.
Wow. Okay. It's almost like the
No.
last scene of your film.
Yes, but a bit more stressful. I'm working on a film, very intimate film that covers all my years with a camera. And I got my camera when I was 14, and I was a very lost immigrant and teenager that couldn't express himself, and I didn't understand what is going on in my family and what bring to this bad relationship between them. So I started to film back then, and basically my father, he was my main character all my life, and this is how we communicated, through camera. And 3 years ago, I discovered that I have a sister, a secret sister, and from out of marriage. Yes, and it was a big drama in my family before I was born, and they kept it in secret, both of them, so nobody will know. And I discovered her, and she came to meet my father basically a few years before he passed away, and it was a very strong journey that changed all the family's energy and our destinies. A lot of things changed, and it was very tough process to go through. But this is the movie that I'm doing right now. Basically, it's about heritage and how it goes from man to man, and about the consequences of that, and how it reflects inside, outside. Yeah, this is the movie I'm working on right now.
Wow, we'll be looking forward to seeing that, but I'm sure you have the whole process of actually making it.
Yes.
And what about you, Lorraine?
Funnily enough, FM, I'm also working on a personal documentary. It's about my family and this period of time in the 1950s that was unspoken in my family for a very long time. And I didn't discover the details about it until my grandmother, before she passed away, invited me to take a look in a drawer that contained letters and pictures from this period of time. And so it sort of started me on this journey of trying to find out more about what happened. In short, my grandmother had several children back to back in the 50s, and a few miscarriages in there as well. She suffered from postpartum depression, and this triggered bipolar disorder. This is Los Angeles in the 1950s. Only bipolar disorder didn't exist as a diagnosis at the time. And so the letters themselves tell this story from multiple different perspectives, and everybody is pointing a finger at somebody else. And the more that I spoke to my family, the more I discovered that everybody's memories are the same, are different, excuse me, everyone has different memories about the exact same set of events. And so the film that I'm making, I'm calling it a creative nonfiction film. And it's about everybody's story and sort of giving everyone the chance to tell it, to see if all of these different versions, these like competing narratives, can all exist to enhance the truth instead of to take away from it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you're both making me think now of Sarah Pollin's story. Is it The Stories We Tell? Especially in your case, Lorraine, but we're going to be looking forward to seeing both of those films. And I think this underlines how throughout the festival we've been talking about, using a camera to work things through, not necessarily like we always know what we're getting into when we turn the camera on. Speaking of which, using research and exploration, I would love to conclude this panel by hearing Kathy, what you're working on, and also you, Eliana. So what are you getting yourselves into these days?
I'm writing a book on empathy, how you can use the past to create it, or how you can use the past to destroy it. And it's set within the context of Russia and Ukraine.
I'm writing a book about Polish Jewish memory books, which are collective volumes of memories of towns before and during the Second World War.
Yeah, excellent. I think you all have each other's emails now, so I have a feeling you'll be in touch. And I just, once again, I just want to thank all of you for your time. I want to thank our watching and listening audience for spending time with us today. Look real quick and make sure we didn't miss any questions. Actually, I can't see because I had to reconnect. But I think we're okay. And we hope to see you here in Central Pennsylvania with your next project. The next live stream that we have is at 2 o'clock with all of our virtual shorts filmmakers. And we're looking forward to talking to them. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming to our Talkback with Efim Gravoy and Lorraine Price, hosted by Kathy Warner and Eliana Adler. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Pearl. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you to the film